Bien, pues comenzamos. Well, welcome to this fourth webinar of the Red ALExI network. I would like to thank all of you for being here, and of course, thank you, Dr. Anna Otto, for her acceptance of being here today. Anna teaches didactics of English and infant education and advanced English didactics in the Department of Language Education of the Madrid Open University, the UDIMA, in Spain. Her main research interests are didactics of foreign languages and assessment and CLIL. So today we have a real specialist on CLIL and on very young learners. So we're very pleased to have you here, and the floor is yours whenever you want.
Well, thank you so much, Beatriz, for the very nice welcome. And thank you, everyone, also for being here. I'd like to do my presentation, as you know, and as you were announced, in English. But then afterwards, there will be some time for questions. I hope you all have questions, and the questions can be both in English or in Spanish, whatever suits you best. Yeah, I don't have any props about answering in Spanish or in English. So I hope you make the most of the talk. And I guess always the most interesting part of these workshops or these talks is your questions, your comments at the end. Why? Because it really helps us researchers and teachers to bring interesting topics into research and to go deeper into this topic of CLIL for very young learners. Okay, so having said that, I'd like to start with my presentation today. It's going to be quite brief, as I say. If there's something you don't understand during my presentation, you can jot them down, the questions or the other comments, and I will be glad to answer afterwards. Let's start with a very brief overview of our session today. Yeah, we're going to talk about CLIL, as you know, stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning, and how this approach to methodologies, remember, it is not a methodology in itself, but it is just an approach to varied methodologies, can be applied successfully for very young learners, right? For kids age 3 to 5, right? What we call educación infantil, right? We would comment briefly on the different scenarios we can have in Spain. I will focus specifically in Spain, although some of the examples I brought today are taken from other European scenarios, right? Then we will deal to the topic of CLIL and whether it suits very young learners and why, right? We will specifically focus as well on the developmental issues of very young learners, what we need to know, not just generally about very young learners, but about language acquisition, right? And also about the skills that you as infant education teachers, pre-primary teachers, need to know if you're going to delve into bilingual education, yeah? And finally, and maybe this is the most interesting part for you all, I would try to give some useful tips and lessons we have learned from other contexts, lessons that that I thought could be useful for you, right? And there will be also finally like some food for thought for you, like a very brief questionnaire so that you can have some food for thought, so that you can have some questions in order to reflect on your own practice, right? Maybe some of you are already teaching CLIL for very young learners. Maybe some of you are thinking of teaching that in the future. You know, this is the new market niche, as we call, right? And this is the new interesting and developing area in Spain, bilingual education. But it is essential for us teachers to be prepared for that. Bilingual education is much more than dar la clase en inglés, right? Than teaching in English. It takes a lot of approaches. It takes a lot of methodologies, right? You need to have a good level of English. You need to be confident on your level and so on, okay? So let's start with the different scenarios and legislation. I'm not naming all the legislation in Spain; it would be time consuming, right? But I would like to focus on these important aspects, because I guess that uh, very sadly, infant education and infant education teachers are embedded, or infant education is embedded inside the block of primary education. They often treat it the same. When we talk about primary, we involve infant education and primary education. They are in the same pack, and this is very sad to be treated this way, because even if it's not a compulsory stage in education in Spain, it is a very important one, and it has to be treated seriously, okay, and apart from primary education. Children are different, they have different needs, and teachers are different, and they have different needs as well, right? Uh, Not just in bilingual education, but also when it comes to teaching English or teaching foreign languages in Spain, there's this lack of specification of minimum contents in some autonomous communities, comunidades autónomas, right? And an agreement on the accessible assessment standards, for instance. So each community is in charge of developing and implementing early language acquisition, and we might find many differences. We have the case of Madrid, for example. This is the case I know the most, because this is the autonomous community where I conducted my research on bilingual education. In Madrid, a bilingual teacher, even if it's in infant education, needs to have this habilitación lingüística, what we call linguistic certification, right, which is a C1. In some other regions, such as Andalusia, has to be a B2, but I hope in the future all the communities are getting the C1, right? Sometimes, however, it is not just a matter of having a C1, but someone can have a B2 and also be an excellent teacher. But you need to be prepared for the challenges of infant education and for kids this age. In Madrid, we have no integrated curriculum. There's no integrated syllabus, and recommendations are as follows. In the first year, they say children should be exposed to at least 3 sessions per week, lasting for 45 minutes. In the second year, we move further and we have at least 4 sessions per week, lasting 45 minutes. And in the last year, infantil 5 años, that's the third and last year before they access primary education, they have at least 5 sessions, all lasting 45 minutes. I don't know about you, if you've ever been in an infant education class, but I guess that sometimes longer exposition does not necessarily mean better exposition, right? And maybe for some kids, especially 3-year-old, 45 minutes can be very, very long, exhausting session, right? This is just for you to notice, to reflect on the topic. Then we have Valencia. We have no clear specifications about timing, about how long the session should be, but there's regular input through some experimental programs, and they get up to 80% of the syllabus is taught through English. And notice the preposition, which is the key preposition in CLIL. It is not in English, but through English. It is not, again, dar la clase en inglés, but it is using the language to capture students' attention and to integrate the content and the context, which is also so important in infant education, to be dealing with the language. So they go hand in hand with each other. Okay? What is the purpose then of early bilingual education? Bilingual education is meant to build strong foundations on language learning. Okay? In words of the Council of Europe, it is to ensure language learning is effective, key attitudes about respecting other people, other languages, and other cultures are formed, and of course, that these foundations for later language learning and acquisition rather than learning are led. It is meant to be such as a preparation for languages in the future. We cannot talk, as you know, about competencies yet, yeah, not in infant education. Competencies will start in primary education. So these early bilingual education has a main goal to start starting with the foundation so that we can move further, right? This is what it is, but what it is not. But bilingual education, again, is not having bilingual children. Yeah, if we understand about bilingual, that they manage to both languages, English and Spanish, equally, right? But rather they are not balanced, what we call balanced bilinguals, but functional bilinguals. And this means people who are able to use languages, both languages, in different contexts. But there will always be a language which is the dominant one, especially in this context, in the Spanish or the European context, where English is not a second language they acquire, but a foreign language. Remember the differences between acquiring a second language, which is present in society. That would be the case of Canada, French and English, Catalonia, the bilingual communities already, Valencia, which was the case of Valencia, País Vasco, and so on and so forth, right? Learning a foreign language is a different thing. So bilingual education is not about having bilingual kids. It's not about forgetting about Spanish. It's not about having all the syllabus taught in English, but it is giving instruction, teaching by using both English and Spanish. But as it's for very young learners, we need to be sensible to learners' likes, to learners' needs, what they prefer, how they behave, and so on. Okay? Why do we think that CLIL might be suitable for young learners? Because kids are sponges, because as everybody says, but not really. We will talk about that later, but not really. We believe, and it has been evidenced by several research around Europe and also in Japan, that CLIL can be suitable for primary, secondary, but also very young learners, for infant children, because it deals with experimenting things in the environment, in the context they know, yeah, which is home and school, because it promotes independence and it promotes self-education, right? Also, because it is focused on a very important aspect of infant education, as you already know, which is los centros de interés, children's centers of interest, okay? Because it improves also second language learning in an integrated way, yeah? So that kids can be prepared for primary, right? And also, finally, and maybe the most important aspect, because this is an active, dynamic, motivational approach which promotes creativity instead of mere listening and producing or reproducing messages, right? Well, in words of Doug Coyle and colleagues, this is not about transferring knowledge from one person who is the expert as a teacher and a novice, which is the kid in infant education, but to allow people to construct their own understanding, what we call significant knowledge, and be challenged. Okay? So if we want to embark in this exciting trip to bilingual education for infant, for pre-primary kids, what do we need to take into account? First, we need to be clear about misconceptions about the critical period hypothesis. I'm sure that everyone knows about, well, that's a common conversation at school entrance, in the parks, everywhere you go, like, los niños son esponjas. Careful with that. Children can be sponges for pronunciation, because when they are very young, their brain is more open to absorb pronunciation, and the brains are prepared to get any accent they are exposed to. So it is much better for them to acquire languages when they are very young, because they will try to copy accents in a better way than when we are adults. Differences between the and B, and so on, which might be difficult for us older students or older speakers of a language, but it does not really mean that they will absorb everything we do in the class. Yeah, they need the magic thing, which is always motivation and time. A combination of time and motivation. Okay, think about the critical period hypothesis, was established back in 1957. Yeah, if I'm right, by Lenneberg, but it has been lots of research afterwards. Okay. We also need to consider the silent period, which is the first stage in language acquisition. It is in second language acquisition, but it is more frequent in foreign language acquisition. As you already know, we are more prepared. We absorb more content. We understand more than the things we are able to produce afterwards. Right? And when we start learning the languages, we are afraid of being treated as silly people. We are afraid of making mistakes and so on, even if we are playing, as it would be the case of kids. Yeah, because some parents go and say, okay, but they are playing, lo aprenden jugando. Yeah, but they need to be relaxed and they need to be respected. So we need to respect this silent period. It can last from 2 to 6 months, can last much longer, but the kids need to be respected, and we need to find other ways to ask them to show understanding or misunderstanding. Okay. We also need to have when we are designing lessons, preparing our classes, we need to expose kids to very short, at the beginning, what we call language showers. It is like a shower they receive. Very short and gradual exposure to the language. Has to be short, but it has to be rich. They can't be treated as dumb people. They are not dumb at all, right? And this input has to be meaningful. Meaningful for us? No way. Meaningful for them. It has to be centered on their likes and interests. Centros de interés, again, right? We need to remember that kids this age are still in what we call Piaget, well, not we, but Piaget calls the pre-operational stage, which, as you know, starts at approximately 2 years old and lasts until 7 years old. Can take longer for some kids, can finish earlier for some others. But in this pre-operational stage, they have not developed abstract thinking. And the abilities they have need to be represented through artistic, linguistic, and playful moments. Be aware of multiple intelligences as well. There will be kids who are more linguistic than others. There will be kids who are very shy and don't want to participate. And there will be kids who love drawing and painting. Okay? We have already treated these centers of interest. It is not just what they have in the syllabus, but it is always what they like to do in the free time. Yeah, and it has to be the same centers of interest for everyone in the class. So try to observe your kids and try to adapt as much as you can. This is what we always do, teachers. Yeah, regardless the class we have. Okay, and of course, we need to consider that CLIL, well, of course, language learning, foreign language learning, English lessons, but CLIL also, this is much more than nursery rhymes and songs. Yeah, it takes the content, putting together. Yeah, and it takes interaction, and it takes motivation, and very dynamic and very short activities. Remember that a kid this age is able to concentrate on an activity just for a 5-minute span. Very short periods of attention, and we need to be quick so that we don't lose the attention quickly. Okay. Sorry. And as a teacher, if I want to prepare, if I want to be a bilingual education teacher in the future for infant education, for pre-primary kids, what skills do I need? Well, you need to be prepared linguistically. Of course, the better your level, the better you will perform. But also you need to be confident about your language level, and you shouldn't be comparing yourself to the language assistant, to your other colleagues in the department, other native speakers, right? As this was some research by Jane Moon back in the nearly 20 years ago, and she demonstrated by asking teachers that the self-conception you have about your own English level can have a deep impact on the way you teach, and students will notice. Okay. Also, you will need specific training on English as a foreign language, yeah? And also you will need specific trainings, in some of it at least, on synthetic phonics. You attended two fantastic workshops by our expert on synthetic phonics, Angela, last week and 2 weeks ago. And I'm sure she gave you some tips and tricks to know more about a topic. This is really interesting, and children usually love it. Yeah, it will help you as a teacher to improve your own pronunciation. It will help you to teach other people the English sounds. Okay. And also, you will need some specific training on CLIL pedagogies, not a master's degree on the bilingual education, but some specific pedagogy on CLIL about the 4Cs and how to connect cultural elements along with the context, with the content, and with the language, the types of language we will need, ways to treat mistakes, not to be very punitive with mistakes, and so on. And I love the last one because this is the one we usually forget. We will also need the ability to work with peers, with other teachers at school. Especially if you are the language specialist, you will need to work very closely with the tutor in the class, con el profesor, la profesora, tutora de la clase de infantil. Okay? If we're talking about integrating the curriculum, we're also talking about integrating the group of teachers. Yeah, it means teacher collaboration. It means designing the same patterns or the same units so that kids will perceive the syllabus as an integrated one already. And it's not that when the Miss Lisa comes to the class with the English teacher, we do these things, and when it is the tutor, we do different things. They need to go and they need to feel that everything at school, everything they do at school is coordinated, and it goes in the same way. They go hand in hand, the English lessons along with other topics we may deal with. Okay. Okay, let's start with the most useful tips, and lessons we have learned. Okay, how can we design an effective lesson? Yeah, when there's lots of vocabulary they will know, and we know that the best way to do this is to start teaching new vocabulary. Well, as Soraya Garcia Esteban recommends, we need to start with familiar language. Yeah, language that students already know. Familiar content next, then move on to the new content, and then move on to the new language. So we are doing this progression, right? So they are not afraid of being of encountering many difficult new words, things they don't understand. Yeah. Well, this will be like for 3-4-year-old, I suppose. Maybe when you move higher, when they are like in the last semester, quinto de infantil 5 años, maybe you can try to change the pattern, but this is the basic pattern to smooth a nice transition, right? From the things they know already to the things they would like to know, you would like them to know. Okay, the quality, second, of English input must be very, very high. Okay, I mean, quality English, yeah. Topics, they are of interest to the kids, but we are treating this quality English input with the use of parentheses. This was called motheries at the beginning, but we have changed the term, and it's called parentheses. What is parentheses? I guess it has been translated as lenguaje materno, paterno. It is the way we address, it is the way a mom or a dad usually addresses kids. And has specific features such as higher intonation, the tone is slower, there's lots of repetition so that they understand words easily. right? It's not the way we would address an adult, but it is the way that families usually address kids. But we need to use parentese as well. This was a lesson learned from this experiment done in the Comunidad de Madrid, in Madrid Autonomous Community by Ferran Ramirez and co, like 3 years ago. Yeah, they were testing CLIL, the CLIL approach, bilingual education in kindergartens, yeah, very young kids, yeah, and it was shown that parentese does help a lot because kids feel they are in a secure environment. They can be safe, yeah. We also need a context which is social, where they can interact with each other through games, board games, whatever you have in the class, activities prompting face-to-face interaction, communication as the most important thing in the class. Yeah, speaking and doing things with the language, manipulating things. Also, try to encourage vocalization and interaction right from the beginning of the class. Try to be the language model yourself when you are pronouncing words. Exaggerate your pronunciation. Try to work along with other speakers. In this experiment, in this research, they were using multiple native speakers, and this was a recommendation. I don't agree with that at all. Yeah, I guess a Spanish speaker can be perfect if she's motivated, if has a good level of English, and if he makes himself or herself understood to the class. Yeah, but what I find important is to have a variety of speakers, so that students are exposed to multiple accents and people. Make the most of language assistants in the class if your school has one or two auxiliares de conversación. Sometimes they are afraid of entering the clase de infantil because they don't really know how to treat children, but that will be your role, right? Showing her how your class works, how they are organized, yeah? And also try to have this play-based through games, through repetitions, through playful activities. Everything you do in the class should be play-based instruction. I brought this advice also from the CLIL project in Austria, and the recommendations were the following. Try to create a safe and nurturing environment where these very young people, very young learners feel safe, feel comfortable, respect if they don't want to talk at all. There will be kids who are not able to talk well, even in their mother tongue. So imagine how frustrating it could be for them if you're forcing them to speak in a different language, okay? Try to promote social classroom interactions as part of formats. Formats are what we call rutinas, las rutinas en infantil. These formats give people a safe atmosphere, right? And you can start, for instance, from classroom language, how you greet them in the morning by saying, hello, how are you? Take your coats off. We say hello, we sit down, we listen. The more you repeat their routines, the more they will know what comes next and they will feel safer. Okay, imagine yourself in a foreign country where you don't know what's going to happen next. You will be terrified. Okay, now put yourself in the position of very young learners who just left their moms and dads outside the class and they are receiving instruction in a different language. How would you feel? Okay, terrified sometimes. Use arts and crafts the more you can, yeah, because when kids are concentrated on manipulating things, on doing things they like, yeah, or in total physical response activities, movement activities, which they do need, yeah, they will absorb knowledge in a more meaningful way. And they do need movement. We can't expect these very young learners being sitting in the class listening to our instruction. No way. They even need it in the primary class, but forget about let alone the infant education, right? Concentrate on oral skills, listening and speaking, and forget about writing. Yeah, I know synthetic methods are great, but if you are not teaching literacy at that moment, you don't force students to write or to read. Yeah, this has to be something natural for them. You can bring books to the class. I brought mine myself. I don't really know whether you can see my presentation and myself on the camera, but I brought some books today. They can be books in Spanish, in English, whatever. Yeah, so that they see books have information, but they are not forced to read that information. Not now. Okay, give students a voice. Ask them things they like. Yeah, after finishing an activity. This is a wonderful one. I suppose you know this. 3 stars and a wish. After finishing an activity, ask the students. 3 cosas que hemos hecho bien, 3 stars, 3 things we did well, and 1 thing we need to improve. That's the wish. Allow them to use signs. Yeah, use signposting, using flags. Yeah, if they want to say something in their mother tongue, there's the flag, or there's the Spanish flag. If they want to say something in the foreign language, in English, they can use the British or the American flag. Okay, and also related with the silent period, allow mother tongue use when necessary. If it's too much and they know about the language, you can use paper clips. That, like, they just have 4 paper clips, and they can use just this 4 paper clips. Allow them to mix languages. This is so enriching for them. This is how they learn. Yeah, this is how they learn their mother tongue. When people start talking, they don't bring a dictionary with them. Yeah, and they say things like ponido instead of puesto. And they could say goat instead of went. Well, goat and went is for native speakers, of course. This is not the best example, but they need to experiment with the language. They need to play with the language to see how it works. Okay. They're also constructing this knowledge in the mother tongue. Remember, they are not masters in their mother tongue. Yeah, and it won't be a bad thing for them. No se van a hacer ningún lío, as people say. Right? Scaffolding. We will focus on scaffolding later, yeah, because there's some magnificent advice by our friend Teresa Fleta later in the presentation. Use scaffolding from using visual presentations. Reformulate a sentence when they made it wrong. Go for intelligibility, yeah, meaning and fluency rather than accuracy. Don't look for native-like pronunciation, but things that are intelligible, that people can understand. Yeah. Check comprehension using Spanish, using their mother tongue. Very sadly, students are getting used to not understanding a word in bilingual classes, and it goes worse when it comes to secondary education, because they just sit in the class and they don't understand a single word. So please do check they are understanding or not understanding using Spanish. Yeah. Use redundancy. You have to be an actor. Everyone who's an infant education teacher, you know we are actors and actresses, and we are miming and doing playful things all the time. Model correct language use. Allow for sufficient wait time, because people need time to process things in their brain, especially if it's in a different language, if it's in the foreign language, in English. And then they will also need some time to muttering words, yeah, to producing a message. Okay, so allow them to have sufficient wait time. We have this natural tendency of asking and waiting for a very quick response. It doesn't work that way. It would be too stressful for kids. Okay, and as I was pointing out before, allow them to use alternative ways to show understanding or misunderstanding. Can be the flags, can be thumbs up, can be thumbs down, whatever you want to use. Okay. About materials, well, materials are usually good, but it doesn't really mean that all materials can suit all types of learners, as you know already. Well, luckily, publishing houses are doing great efforts to improve materials that are not a translation from British materials anymore, but you need to find your own. Finding your own materials will allow you to be safer in the class, will allow you to show a more confident teacher that you are, and they allow kids as well to bring their own things into the class. Yeah, especially when you read in a book. We have these wonderful books from publishing houses, the big, we can show the images, the characters, repeat, and so on. But a very useful activity is also to tell kids, why don't you bring your favorite book next time? And it can be one day in the week, could be Friday. Friday, we are always very tired, them and us as well. And you can tell them to read a book. I chose this one. It is written in Spanish. It was one of my kids' favorite when he was in infant education. It's called El Camión de Bomberos. It's written in Spanish, but it doesn't matter because I can always show them the content, show them about the characters. The kid will feel he's the protagonist that day because the teacher picked a book, yeah, he owns. He will encourage his passion for reading, yeah. And even if he is not able to read words, there are very few words, he will be interested in listening to this story in another language, a story he knows, a story she knows. Okay, this is just an idea. You can have many others as well. About storytelling, I would like to stop briefly about storytelling because this is very typical, not just in bilingual education context, but also in language acquisition context. But storytelling is much more than reading a story. Yeah, it has to be connected with the content they are dealing with. Yeah, imagine we're talking about seasons of a year, so you need to find a book which is connected with seasons, because that way it can be essential at this pre-literate stage to present, to practice, and consolidate knowledge. Yeah, storytelling is focusing. It takes a lot of practice. Yeah, it's about visualizing and prompting chunks and keywords. It's not just reading a text as you would read it for your own or for an adult. Yeah. So you have to mime a lot. You have to change your intonation, different voices when there's more than one character. You have to offer positive feedback as well. And finally, there's some steps recommended by Ramirez Verdugo. How to choose a story it's a clear storyline, has to be easy to follow. You need plenty of repetition. It needs to offer opportunities for interaction. It needs to have illustrations which they like and appropriate language for them. Okay, I would like to focus as well on why we need this scaffolding, why we need to integrate the language skills with the content areas. Right, so I would recommend this article by our friend Teresa Fleta, right, about scaffolding, because where she considers that, I absolutely agree, that infant education CLIL can be a useful scaffold, can do lots to prepare kids for primary education. So we need to consider all content areas. We need to find some practices to support, to encourage listening and speaking. And we need to consider some practices to support emergent readers. Supporting emergent readers is much more than reading and listening to books. Can be placing accents on syllables, can be clapping musical rhythms to see how words work, and so on. It means interaction. I'm a bit short of time, as you can see. And finally, before we go into the questionnaire, if you want to call it that way, I want to focus on teacher collaboration. Okay, as recommended by our colleagues Beatriz Cortina Perez and Andugar Soto. Well, this is a book I love, yeah, and it really inspired my my passion on the infant education and teaching languages, didáctica de la lengua extranjera en educación infantil. It is the one I use in my lessons at Udima. So I love it. It has plenty of activities, of opportunities to use the language and so on. And they do recommend to use, to embed English in all the sessions, in everyday lessons. So not just in the English session, okay? So that they perceive it naturally and spontaneously. This way, kids can also notice that all the teachers they have at their disposal are language teachers. They know about the language and they deal with the same topics. It may be el cuerpo humano, it may be las estaciones del tiempo, it may be our families, it may be whatever. Okay? This is a fantastic way also to incorporate language assistance effectively in the lesson, not just in the language lesson, but also in the content lesson, right? And this is the perfect way as well to incorporate cooperative lesson planning, okay? There's also this example where they ask students to revise have a look at the primary syllabus, primero de primaria, for instance, and try to pick the contents that are present or kind of present in infant education that will help them in the transition from infant to primary bilingual education. I mean, try to pick which things you can connect to the future primary education so that you are preparing them for that. Listen, I don't mean you are preparing them for writing. Yeah, this is one of the biggest dangers of infant education teachers, being forced by primary teachers to prepare people to write. That's not what I mean, but preparing the topics. Yeah, warming students to the topic so that they know a bit about the topics when they get to primary education. Getting to primary education, forgetting about corners, forgetting about centers of interest and just to teachers, and being confronted with more than one teacher can be very stressful for a kid. So you need to prepare them for a smooth transition. Okay, before we finish and we start with the questions, this is a very CLIL questionnaire to see how CLIL are you in infant education. You don't need really to answer, but this is just for you to think about it. 1. At the start of the lesson or topic, I found out what learners know about the topic. Yes, no, always. At the start of the lesson or topic, I found out what language related to the topic learners already know. Familiar language, remember. Okay? I use visuals as much as I can to introduce new topics. I use manipulation, hands-on activities by experimenting, creating objects, cutting, drawing, whatever, to introduce new concepts and new topics. As you can see, everything, it's the language around everything, but it is more doing things with the language, okay? I provide different sorts of input by pictures, realia, videos to help them understand the topic. I encourage production, but also respect silence, yeah? I work in collaboration with the tutor and the language assistant. I do not expect much more than simple sentences and key vocab, right? Not sentences, not full sentences, yeah? It could be impossible. I integrate phonics to help learners improve their reading and listening skills. And finally, I use positive feedback and expect the most of my people in the class. This is so important for them. Okay, remember how important the image you show the students about themselves is. Yeah, they won't care about their parents' opinion, but they will care about the teacher's opinion in infant education. They will do for sure. You're so important for them. And I would like to finish my talk today by thank you all for being committed teacher for very young learners. The languages is all about affection. So do not forget the importance of the affective filter. in language acquisition, do not forget to respect your students and to go with them in the enriching process of learning a language and knowing about other cultures. Thank you so much.
Okay, Anna, thank you very much for such an interesting talk. And I think it has been very revealing for all of us. You have given lots of examples and mm, practical issues to work with CLIL. Anyone want to, I don't know, to make any comment or question or whatever? Please feel free in English or Spanish or whatever you want with the audio or the chat. Uh, they're saying you thank you in the chat. Thank you. It was very interesting. Can you read the chat, Anna?
I can.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
reading
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Okay. And I may, in the meanwhile, I may ask you one question.
Cool. Yeah.
From your experience, okay, in a clear classroom, working with functional bilinguals, okay, as you were saying, because here in Spain we cannot really say we are doing a bilingual approach, but what's your level of, let's say, of tolerance of translanguaging and using the mother tongue in the classroom? What's your opinion about that? I don't know.
Well, yeah, the very interesting questions indeed, Beatriz. The some limits we should never forget. I mean, the translating everything we say in the class is not clear at all. But we need to be attentive because there's always one thing that they don't get whatever you do, and maybe by using one single word in the mother tongue we can they get this like a click in their brains and they understand everything. I would say like 20% of mother tongue use could be okay, right?
Okay.
But
Yeah,
it also
yeah,
depends on the class. But we as teachers know that there's not the same segundo A, that segundo B, or segundo C. You might be, well, there's this danger of translating everything. If they know you will be translating everything, they won't pay attention to the English version for sure. So
yeah,
you need to be wise and see whether they are really listening or they are waiting for the Spanish translation. Yeah,
yeah.
they can be quite witty as well. So we need to be careful with that. But I would say for infant education, well, for primary it can be different. But for infant education, we can start with 80% of English exposure, and we can move higher if we like. And then there will be some times when the kid is crying and he's desperate because somebody hit him or whatever, where of course you need to use your mother tongue because they need to be comforted in their mother tongue. There are some
Okay.
special occasions.
Okay. I think there is a very nice question here. Ana Maria Pino says, who should bring CLIL into infant classroom? Specialists, class teachers, both? I guess it depends on teachers' previous linguistic and methodological competencies, but what do you think about that? I think that that's an eternal debate, an
Yeah.
unfinishing debate in the CLIL methodology, sorry, approach. What do you think,
Well,
Anna?
I would say the class teacher should be prepared for teaching the well, maybe not for teaching all sessions in English, but it should be prepared at least to work in collaboration with a language specialist. If the tutor has a basic level of English, but he's able to design a curriculum in an integrated way, that's fine. Yeah, but so it can be a combination of both. The specialist will focus on pronunciation and phonics, but the other teacher can bring some information about the topic. And that way, maybe she doesn't need a C1 for that purpose, the tutor. Maybe can be B1, B2 until she gets higher, right? But I guess for CLIL, for real integration, we need a combination of people, not just one teacher.
And Anna says, and what about evaluation? Should it be focused upon attitudinal aspects, or
Yeah,
what
for
do you
sure.
think?
For sure, yeah. Well, evaluation is the poor relative of education, as as you all know. It is treated like at the end of the formative process of the educational process. But yes, for sure. If you remember when I was stating the how we deal with the foundations of language, the first thing we should evaluate should be attitude. But also, we need to take into account that there will be very shy kids who are afraid of speaking in front of other people, not just in English, but also in Spanish. And it is not that they don't want to participate, it is that they are afraid of participating, and they don't know how to do that because they are very, very shy. Yeah. So
Mm.
I would try to focus on attitudinal aspects, but also things they can do without expecting production in the language, but manipulation in the language. I mean, for instance, if they are able to follow instructions, you were reading a book and then you gave them some flashcards and they need to put the flashcards in order, such as this happened first, then second. If they are able to do so, even if they don't utter a word, they got the activity and they passed it. Well, passed, yeah. If we can talk about pass and fail.
Okay. I don't know if there are more questions around. Belen says, I have a question too. How do you collaborate with the families in order to continue the learning of English when you are not the class teacher, but the English specialist teacher? Do you ask the families to do something at home with kids?
No way. No
No
way.
way.
No way. I wouldn't burden families. But some families are prepared and willing to do so, and some families are not really. And it is not their responsibility at all. Families should be prepared to encourage children to learn the language, to show them it is a nice opportunity to speak another language, to meet other cultures, to be in contact with other people they don't know, and so on. But they shouldn't be talking the kids in English. They shouldn't be taking them to language lessons. We're killing our infant education kids by taking them to language academies. It is not really necessary at all. Just imagine how many families have been suffering during this lockdown, durante el confinamiento, because they weren't able to care for basic care. I mean,
Yeah,
not.
I was going actually to ask you about the lockdown, and maybe you have heard from families or wherever about the CLIL programs. How are they managing really? Because I can I
Yeah,
may I don't know. It is so hard when it's not a bilingual program. I cannot imagine
yeah,
if your kids has to study and you have, I don't know, you have
yeah.
nothing of English at all.
Well,
So,
it was a
have you
nightmare.
heard of experiences, or do you know how it's doing, for instance, in the Comunidad de Madrid, in the bilingual schools? How are they doing to help these families? I don't know.
Yeah, well, the problem in primary schools, especially secondary students, are different. They can be independent
Yeah.
as well. But in primary schools, the problem in Madrid, it depends on the area, mostly. There are some state schools who are public schools and who are receiving bilingual education, but parents are obsessed with English, and they are constantly taking their kids to language lessons. So they were hiring English tutors, online tutors, and whatever, so that they could help their kids. This is a mistake. Why? Because if kids are used to not listening to to English, because they will be someone afterwards in the at home who will be explaining the lesson in Spanish, their parents, the teacher, or helping them out, they will lose interest. So it was very hard for many families. Surprisingly, in some other areas, more deprived areas, teachers are very committed because they can't have the parent support, and they are the only people responsible of students' academic progress, the teachers. So they were trying to offer lots of online lessons, and they did great.
Okay.
most of them. So it is quite surprising how a parent can impose a teaching style and behavior on a kid.
Yeah, it is. There is another good question there. Maybe Anna can switch on Anna Pino can switch on her microphone and explain a bit better because
Sure.
it's she says when you are working in a multilingual context with kids who barely understand school language, how do you approach the design of CLIL project? Do you go back to linguistic plans? Anna, I don't know if you want to add something, Anna Pino, to so that Anna Otto can have a more clear idea.
It's okay like that. The thing is that I live in Ceuta,
Uh-huh.
and here lots of students in infant classrooms and in primary school and the rest of levels in education use Darija as a first language. And I have the experience of having worked in a bilingual project in a state school. And some of my teacher friends said to me that it was a waste of time developing a bilingual project with kids who don't speak Spanish as their first language because it was going to be a mess. And in my experience, these kind of kids have communicative competencies that make it easier for them
Yeah,
to follow
absolutely.
you when you are speaking in English. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to know uh, what kind of experience you have in relation to that topic, and in case you have any tips or any ideas you can share with us. I would
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much, Anna, for your question. I'm so happy you're asking me about that. I was
Mm.
visiting Ceuta back in September, and I was visiting some schools, and I was shocked that in some schools they did it great, yeah, and they considered that the Arabic boys and girls were found it easier to learn languages because they were dealing with two languages already. They were kind of bilingual, or they were trying to be bilingual already, so it was easier for them to accommodate a third language, which was English. And some other teachers in some other schools were against that idea and thought it was impossible because it was more difficult for them. Uh, there was also a nice experience about a couple of schools sharing the same language assistant. Uh, One school was so happy with the language assistant, and the other ones it was a total disaster. So it depends on the approach you have, and it depends on the expectations you have on your students. As I pointed out before, you need to expect the most of your students always, and absolutely Arabic kids are more prepared than our monolingual kids to deal with two languages, with three languages in their case, because they are already exposed to a bilingual society. It may take longer for them, but it doesn't mean it has to be worse. It does take longer, sometimes not much longer, but they are more prepared, they are more conscious of the need to speak other languages, and we need to be aware of that. I'm not. I don't know whether I answered your question, but I visited that context, and I really found what my feeling was. Okay, if there are some schools who are doing it great in Ceuta with already bilingual kids, why can't we do the same in Madrid with monolingual kids?
Yeah, thank you, Anna. I
You're
just
welcome.
was writing that I think that one key aspect in this situation is to develop CLIL projects in both English and Spanish.
Yeah, probably, and turn to Spanish when you feel like, well, not when you feel like, when it is necessary for the effective filter. Remember Krashen's effective filter. If someone is blocked, yeah, he won't absorb anything about the language. But if we are relaxed, it is easier for us to learn and absorb the language naturally. But learning languages does take time, lots of time. Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, that was really a key aspect to take into account. Any other question? Anything you want to comment, please? I know here there are many teachers that may have their own experience in CLIL, so feel free to open your microphones and comment, okay, or expand. Anna, go, come on. Anna wants to make
Perdón por ser tan pesada.
no, que va.
And I have been trying to apply CLIL to a college class, okay, to groups at university with students who are trying to become teachers in the future. And I feel very happy about the experience. I think that I have been able to transfer activities which can be developed in infant classrooms to university classrooms, and in that way, students, um, I think that they may feel more comfortable because they learn through experience
Yes.
and theory. What do you think about that kind of experiment?
Like teaching English, teaching a subject at a college, at a university using English.
Yeah, it's not really EMI. It's more CLIL or a combination of both.
It depends on the student's level. If they have a very good level, it's more EMI than anything. If they don't, it's more CLIL. I have this experience when I teach, not didáctica de la lengua extranjera para educación infantil, but that's another subject I teach, which is called didáctica avanzada de la lengua inglesa. I give them the opportunity to express their thoughts in English, but there's this portfolio, and most of the times when they use in Spanish, they really ask questions. They are not trying to impress me. I don't know if I'm being clear. So one has to be sensible about that. There will be times when people need to express their views, how they feel using their mother tongue, but there will be some others when we will need to force them to use the language in an appropriate way, yeah, and to correct. The thing I hate about that is that most of the times I focus on correcting mistakes, and I lose some time on correcting mistakes in English as if I were an English teacher teaching English, lengua extranjera, and not on the subject itself. Maybe it is because I used to be a language teacher before. I don't know, but sometimes I find it difficult. But it is very challenging, and they learn a lot. Lots of people learn a lot, and I have very nice generations of future teachers, very wonderful committed teachers who really believe in bilingual education, who really believe in learning languages with beautiful accents as well, which is wonderful, and with beautiful English, most of them.
Okay, any other question or comment? Anna, it has been really motivating, all your talk and comments. Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone wants to say something else, or we can close the webinar. Yes, no? Okay, so Anna, thank you so much, okay, for being here today and collaborating with the ALExI network. And I hope you enjoy this presentation as much as I have done. And if you are interested in our next webinar, it will be on gamification. You have the link there, and the information is on our website, okay? So thank you, Anna. Bye
Thank you.
to you all. Bye. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Beatriz.
Sí,
Hola.
un momentito, voy a cortar la grabación que